Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another virtual nature experience with the Open Space Authority. My name is Anna Marie, and I'm here back at Laguna Seca Seasonal Wetland with Edward Rooks, who's a naturalist and an artist. And he joined us a couple weeks ago for a really cool bird sketching demonstration. So we're back again. We're going to do some landscape drawings. Edward's going to talk about perspective, about using color, about composition. So if you're new to art or you've been a longtime artist, I hope you'll learn something. I think we all will. And the Laguna Seca Seasonal Wetland is a really cool area. I just have to talk about it a little bit. It's part of the North Coyote Valley Conservation Area. And as we like to describe it, it's just essential for water, working lands, wildlife, and also people like you, people like me. It's just south of downtown San Jose, and we just recently protected it this past November, so it's really, really exciting. You can learn more about it on our website at openspaceauthority.org, and it's just right on the homepage. You can dive right into how cool Coyote Valley is for everyone. I just am going to talk a little bit so more people can join in, and just remember, we're going to be having lots of these virtual nature experiences. Every week we're partnering with some of our friends at Save by Nature, Keep Coyote Creek Beautiful, BioBlitz Club, virtual photo walks, Morning Crane, Healing Art Center for just the biggest scope of virtual nature experiences that we can bring all of you. If you do go out and experience nature firsthand, also, I just want to remind everyone to keep our parks open by maintaining that 6 feet of social distancing, and we can all keep our parks safe, which means keeping you safe and keeping you healthy. And right now, I'm going to hand it over to Edward, and we're going to jump right into the lesson. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. We're going to be drawing today, and we'll be working with crayons. So get your art equipment out, some paper and some pencils and some crayons or paints or whatever colors you wish to use. It's a beautiful day, and it really shows some of the features of perspective that I want to show in this lesson. So I'm going to start with composition, and we're going to show you why I chose this particular view. We're going to have this tree in the foreground, the hills in the background diminishing as they go off in the distance, and then some other taller trees even, but they yet look smaller in the distance. So all of this is part of perspective, but then I'll also talk about the fact that the sky is bluer and the hills are a little bit bluer of green than the grass nearby us and that tree over here. So the greens tend to get warmer. They tend to get redder and yellower as they get closer to us. And I'll show you a little bit about that, and we will use that to enhance the depth of our drawing. Okay, so with that, I'm going to get started. So what I want to do is give you a little sketch of what we're going to draw over here first. Artists like to plan their composition. Okay? So if you look around, Anne-Marie, if you could pan over here, you can see that you've got this wide open grass, too much grass to make an interesting drawing. And then some interesting hills, but it's sort of flat, it doesn't give any sense of depth, you know. And then as you come back over to where we are looking in this direction here towards the north, towards San Jose, you can see the hills are diminishing, you've got some reeds in the foreground, a lot more interest. So this is why I chose this particular direction. If you look to the right, it's again interesting, but not quite as interesting as what we've got in the direction towards the north. So towards the east here, you can see the road moving off, and that's going to show us some perspective. So that would be interesting, and I might use a feature like that, a creek going in the same direction as the road, seeming to come together, converging towards the horizon. These are things I look for. But I'm going to again turn back, and we're going to try to compose our drawing over here on a sketch pad. So I'm looking at a scene where I've got certain elements that I've chosen to include. Okay, and here's my frame. I'm going to make it a horizontal format to give a landscape look. You can make it narrower, longer, Okay, and then you try to figure out where the horizon is. That's the first aspect of composition when you're doing landscapes. Do you want to show more ground, or do you want to show more sky? Do you want the horizon in the middle? And so what do you do to decide on that? And so what I tend to do is try a few little thumbnail sketches, and that'll help me decide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 4 little sketches maybe, and I'll say I want the horizon up above the middle on what we call the 2/3 line. Okay, so if you divide the painting into thirds like this, it'll give you options as to where to put the horizon. So if you want a low horizon, you go down on the lower third, or even further down, okay, halfway down here. But most often people put the horizon in the middle. The horizon line is very obvious there at the base of the hill. What is a horizon? What is a horizon? It is really an optical illusion. It is just where we cannot see, where everything seems to disappear. Everything that's our size will get smaller and smaller and smaller until it disappears at the horizon. So it's just an illusion based on perspective. It's something artists have learned to use to mimic perspective and make their drawings look more realistic. And the better you get at mimicking that effect, the more realistic your drawings will be. So I'm going to just choose to put my horizon in the middle. And I'm going to just choose to show you the diminishing hills going down into the distance here, down into the distance. Okay, and then in front of me here on this third.
Oh, it looks like you lost the mic.
I lost the mic.
Thank you.
Which is what we were trying to avoid. Okay. I'm going to put this tree on this third here. It goes above the... So now I have an interaction of where this tree is based on where that mountain is. And that might be too close to the top. So maybe I need to drop my horizon. Okay, so just by doing this little sketch here, it's showing me some of the problems that I might run into based on this design of where I place this horizon. Okay, these trees in the background, so this is my horizon, these are my mountains, this is my tree here, and then the background, the mid-ground trees are going to be over here somewhere, going up into the sky, something like that. And so I'm planning to show depth by getting lighter as it comes closer to me and darker as it goes towards those trees. That's one option. Okay, I'm using a dark pencil to sketch with so I can sketch quickly and no detail. This is just to figure out where the shapes go, where the major shapes, the major values are going to go. Okay, so these thumbnails are vital for helping you solve problems before you spend a lot of time in painting and so forth. They're quick. I guess they're dirty, but they're very helpful. Okay, maybe I want to change the format and make it a longer format, panorama scene like this. And then I'm going to drop the horizon to the lower third. Then I can have my mountains going away like this. Have my tree here and a little extra space. That's called good space. Because you don't want your objects, your elements, especially a major focal point, to touch the edge of the painting. It draws the attention away from your painting. So you want to have that tree down here. Make that tree the darkest thing to bring that forward, mimicking perspective in terms of contrast. Okay, keep those hills sort of middle gray. Bring the ground in the foreground here dark to go with that tree, and then diminishing, and then have gray trees over here. These are going to be a little darker than the hill, but not as dark as that tree. And this is sort of ringing to me a little more true to what I'm seeing in front of me there. There's some oak trees. I'm going to start to fuss with it now because I like it. Okay, but I also have another element in this drawing, which is at the base of that tree there, I could actually bring in that creek now. There's a creek there with some rushes, some cattails. I could actually bring this back to the original format. So I'm just playing with it, and I'm having fun with this. And that's what you want to do. Quick and dirty, sketchy, no detail. Figure it out, and this is what I like. I'm already finished. I don't need to do any more sketches, I don't think. So let's move on. So the next thing is to talk about color. And I'll start drawing with color. Looking out there, I want to emphasize that red and blue difference from the foreground being redder and the atmospheric perspective bluing of the colors in the background. So if you look at the hill over there, the greens are bluer. If you look at those trees in the midground, they're getting redder and redder, warmer and warmer, darker. And as you're in the foreground here, there's a lot of yellows and even some reds in the soil around me. I want to enhance that. Are we having any trouble with the audio?
The audio sounds great. Your shadow is covering the sketches a little bit, but I think we did some close-ups and...
You got to see what I was working on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So what I want to do is I'm going to show you how I like to start sketching, which is I'm going to say, I'm going to draw the background first, and of course it's bluer, so I'm going to draw with a blue pencil, or crayon in this case. Okay, so I'm going to try to make sure that I have it light up here for the sky, and my horizon's going to be in the middle, maybe a little above the middle, because I now have this creek in the foreground here, and then the mountains in the background, they're beautiful, going like that, and then I'm going to have this mid-ground tree here, very nice tree, and then the trunks coming down below the horizon. Okay? Well, now I want to get the stuff in the foreground. I'm going to sketch with my red or orange crayon, and I'm going to say this is where that cattail is, and you can see that the cattail is warmer, even though it's bright. I'll leave it lighter, but it's warmer, and then the grasses will be over here somewhere, and then in the foreground here I'm going to have quite a bit of warm stuff going on with the soil showing through the grasses nearby, the trunk of the tree on the third, so I want that tree to be here. And don't try to mimic exactly what the tree is, just get tree-ness. You're sort of mimicking the branching of this tree going from fatter at the base, getting thinner, half the thickness on the first branching and half the thickness on the second branching, and then becoming more of an amorphous mass at the top where the leaves are. You don't want to get too much fussy into drawing every leaf. You're just sort of giving an idea of what the leaves are going to be like. Okay, so there we go. We have a red and a blue drawing that's showing this effect of depth. So I'm going to bring in some green for the mid-ground. And some yellow for the foreground. What I'm doing here is sort of putting down a base of color. We will build the greens on top of that. So this is just sort of trying to figure out the depth perspective, and then we put the greens on there. Some of this color is going to show through, some of it's going to disappear, be covered up. Okay? Yellows in the rushes, yellows in the leaves. Bright greens. in the midground, coming into the foreground, leaving those cattails. Is this showing up in the camera all right?
It looks like it started out too light for some people to see, but I think people are being able to see it now. But let us know in the comments if you need a different.
It'll become more and more obvious as we go on. So yeah, we have a problem with extreme light here.
It's very sunny.
Very bright. So you can see that this blue-green in the back here is quite dark. So that's where the mid-ground trees are going to go. Let's just block them out. Okay? Give a block. There's the trunks, the shadow in the bottom, some shadow shapes. You can see those shapes of shadows in the trees over there. And then the hint of a shadow on the grasses below. Okay, I can pick up some of that color here in the foreground in the leaves just to show a shadow side of my tree. The sun is coming pretty much from behind me, but it looks like there's a bit more shadow on the right side and down below the canopy. Otherwise, the canopy is going to be mostly that bright green that we saw in the foreground and midground. Okay, now for the hills, we want the sky to be blue behind it, so we're going to just put in a light blue, and then we want the hills to be a similar color. I'm going to leave it a little bit lighter here. I can't match the exact color of the sky with the colors of the crayons, so I'm not even going to try. But I'm going to just leave it a little brighter near the bottom of the tree there, showing that it's getting brightest in the furthest distance there, getting a little bit darker in this left corner here maybe. Okay, so we're seeing, can you see that now? Picking that pretty much in there.
Can people see it a little better? I think so. Ron says dark color to show up better.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I can see that. Alright, now I'm going to switch to a different blue, slightly darker blue, and I'm just going to wash the hills in some blue first. And then I'll add the green, the same light green for the grasses on the hills. But now they'll be picking up some of the blue and sort of falling back into the fog in the back, into the distance there. So these are the grasses on the hill slope. And it's a bit messy right now, but we'll add more darkness to it and we'll pick up some of those details. So for the trees on the slopes in the back there, I wish I had a slightly less blue dark green than this. Maybe this is a forest green for those trees. So there's some trees on the slope back there, and I want to have the shadows between these ridges picked up, that ridge line picked up. Hard to do detail in crayons, but we're starting to pick up some of these darks, and they're starting to compete with this tree here, so I'll have to fix that by adding some yellows to make that tree in the midground stand out from the, and that's a yellow brown, and it's just mixing with the green to turn it into a dark brown, but that sort of matches the green of that tree there. And the yellows will bring it forward. Now getting back into the background here again, trees on the slope. I'm finding it very difficult working on such a small drawing. I should have probably worked a little bigger. Okay, and then it's just not showing enough separation yet. Some more trees here. And over behind this tree here, make it a little darker as it gets closer to us. I wanted to work small because I thought it would take too much time to do a big drawing, but now I feel really constrained by the size. Okay, so here we go. We're separating that tree. I'm going to just wash it with a darker green just to make it stand out a little more from the sky. Then bring some of these darker greens into the foreground here near the water. The water itself is a kind of a dark green. Dark green peeks up into the reeds. There's the water. Okay, so we started getting a bit of more of a shape. We're seeing the balance of the drawing start to show, which is kind of nice, but it is still a little bit messy. And in time we'll build up the colors so that they will not be quite so messy. But it just takes layering with these crayons. The bright green in the grasses can go up the slope there again, and that will separate it from the sky better, separate it from the tree better. But we are able to then block out the tree. So you need to do it in a step-by-step process so that you don't add too much dark to the hills in the back and then don't have the brights for the trees in the foreground. Alright, so what am I looking at here? I've got a bit of a messy drawing. Alright, so I'm going to add some shadows. We'll keep the foreground separate from the background by adding contrast. The contrast in the back in the hills is lower, so the shadows over there are not as dark as the shadows nearer to us, especially in those trees over there in the midground. Okay, so I'm going to add those shadows with a dark blue or a purple. Better yet, a purple. Okay, save the blues for the real far background. We'll put some shadows on the hill with a darker blue. But let's do this. We're going to try to separate these trees by adding purple, and it actually is a very pretty color, purple. So it adds a beauty to your drawing as well, not just a high contrast in this case with the shadows. So I'm going to peek these shadows here. I can actually draw the trees a bit with this purple, as the shadows help to define the details of the trees. There's a lot of little windows of shadow in those trees, so I can use that. To help define them and to help separate them from the background. I'm going to bring that up over there. I think I'm going to add a little red to it just to help peek it out, bring it forward from the hills as well. This is a rusty brown. That's just going to be a technique of making the trees look a different color green, a redder green, but also to bring them forward of the mountain. I can throw some of that rusty brown now into these grasses here, behind the rushes, cattails, and into the cattails themselves, because the cattails are quite warm. There's actually quite a lot of yellow and red in those cattails, but I'm keeping them bright. Don't want to overdo it. And then define that water, that level line of the water, shadows of the cattails, wet bases of the cattails. And I'm starting to see the depth better now. I can see the distant trees sort of in the mid-ground, and then the hills are separated. This could have some browns in it. We just bring in a little bit of brown. But you have to be very judicious in the background, and when you use anything that's red, you don't want to have that become a major part of the background. Just less in the background of red and more blues. Okay? In the foreground here, we're going to bring some of this rust into the greens, more so here. And then I'm going to bring some of that purple into the shadows of the trunk of the tree. Can you see that trunk there quite well?
I can.
So the shadow side of that tree is the right side, and it's darker on the trunk. And that, to me, is very purple. So I'm going to just add a shadow side to my trunk and my branches. I bring some of that purple into the water as well, and it's becoming my dark. It's a blue. If you think about shadows, shadows are cool, shadows are bluish, shadows are purples. And so you'll lay it over the colors of the trunk, and it will mix and blend with it. So it's not a perfect purple, but it's going to be a purple, okay, or a blue. And in this case, quite dark, so that it brings that tree forward of the background. So we want to have some of the sense of what that tree is, and to me that tree, the branches, there's a certain direction of the branches. They go out horizontally like raised arms, peeking up towards the tips. So here we go. I'm going to try to mimic that. Is that a cotton or an alder? One of those wetland species of trees, cotton or alder. And here's the shape of the out and up, out and up. That's the jizz of this tree. So I'm going to just try to match that sense of what that tree looks. Some trees are droopy, like valley oaks are droopy, the branches hang down towards the ground. These guys, the branches go up. So I'm going to try to get that sense. And then show some of these purples coming through in there. More on this side. The shadow side, more purples over here, and more underneath the canopy. Fewer up in the top up here, but there'll be some going up, reaching to the sky, reaching out and going out like this. And this is starting to help differentiate the tree from the mountains in the background. So the darks in the foreground are going to be darker. Some shadow falling on here. That's going to help to separate my foreground from the hills in the background. Before it was just sort of, everything was similar. Now we're going to start to see that we're going to have a differentiation going on. The higher contrast. Purple shadows. Some places it'll be nice dark spots where there may be animals lurking inside there in the shadows. Okay, so there we go. A little more darkness here. I'm going to start to really layer on some darkness. Oh, that's getting muddy. Rubbing that purple with the green made it a little muddy. Okay, that was a mistake. That happens. Okay, so now I can try to separate my elements a little more. I'm going to add that green in areas. I'm going to target these whites. So anywhere I see white, I'm immediately going for it. That's going to help me immediately bring the color of the drawing up to a level where I'm happier with it, and maybe you'll see it better because so much of the page is showing through right now. I'm just going to build it up, and this is where hopefully it starts to become more fun for people. This is where, when you target these whites like this, it immediately starts to take on a more finished look, and you just keep layering these strokes with your crayon. Fill in some of this rush down here. There's green going down to the water, and then quite a bit of this rush is quite green. Some of it's sort of orangey, so I'll bring some oranges in there soon, but I'm just going to bring a lot more green in here and bring some more green, targeting the whites down in here. Can you see how the tree is starting to stand out a little better? I'm going to make that tree particularly green, bright green. I'm going to bring some yellows into this tree for the sunlight. So here's the green of the tree against the sky, so it separates a bit more. I can darken the sky behind the tree, especially in the left corner as it's getting brighter towards the right. I'm using a prettier cobalt blue, and let that corner stay bright. Okay, so now it's allowing the tree to come forward better. Okay, this blue is really nice. I'm going to target some of the whites in the hills in the back here for letting that hill fall back. It's a dark blue, so I'm going to go for where there's dark greens in those trees back there, and that's going to stand out against that light sky, but yet allow the tree to fall, not the tree, allow the mountain to fall back. So we got more blue in these trees back there, and it's a darker blue, a different blue from what's inside of these trees in the midground. So now hopefully this differentiation between the mountain and the midground trees will be more obvious. Okay, so I'm building up my color. It's a process. It doesn't match what we see exactly, but it's allowing us to make the drawing tell a story and make it easier to read. And you want readability in a painting. That's all that matters. What is out there will not matter tomorrow. What's here will matter tomorrow. So make this work and forget about that, okay? And so the story that I'm telling here is that there's blue mountains in the distance, and then there's going to be yellower or brighter colors here in the foreground. So I'm going to bring more yellow in here now, and you're going to start to see, whoops, you're going to start to see this come forward from that, okay? I'm targeting the whites, okay? Target those whites.
And Marilyn wants to know, does that mean color them with color? When you say target your whites.
Yes. Color them with value, with color. Whatever you're using. If you're using grays, target them with grays. If you're using black ink, target them with the black ink. If you're using colors, target them with the colors. But the whites that show up between the color are very distracting, and they take away from the believability of the drawing. So I'm going to fill in the color in the foreground here with yellow and red, whereas in the midground here I'm going to fill it in with blues and purples. Okay, so it falls back. The yellows here, and then there's some flowers, yellow flowers. See, I can put some yellow in the midground, right where those flowers are, against the horizon there, and that looks like a field of flowers. And because mostly it's bluish green behind there, it still has a depth, but you can tell there's something really yellow there, a bright line of yellow. So maybe some more flowers here. Okay, I'm bringing more yellow into the foreground here, and that is for the perspective, the color perspective, atmospheric perspective as artists call it. Because on Earth our sky is blue, and everything that's in the distance gets colored by that bluing. Alright, so now at this point I want to talk a little bit about what this arrangement of color is. That's a spectrum. If you look at a rainbow, Roy G. Biv, red, yellow, green, blue, violet, is what I'm doing. Red, yellow, green, blue, and yeah, can I put some violet in the sky? Let's try that. I'm going to use a pinker violet, or pink, and then that'll enhance it. I don't know if you guys can see that. The spectrum of color is what we're using to show depth. I think that's really interesting, because if you look at a rainbow, you think, oh, it's a pretty spectrum of colors, but you don't think about one side, the wavelengths, or the wavelengths we see best closest to us. Rainbows are actually separating all light into this depth perspective as far as I'm concerned. The bluer colors being the light that seems furthest away, and it's sort of like the sound version of that would be the Doppler effect. The high frequencies, you know there's something coming towards you, the low frequencies in the distance. It's the same thing with light. Okay, so is this showing up for you guys better now? I'm gonna...
Oh, Elaine says the pink was a great addition. Yes. The only issue is it's hard to get the landscape and the drawing, because then it kind of blows it out. But I think as we're adding more value,
it's showing out. Yeah, it's blowing. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, there's nothing I can do about this wonderful sunlight out here. Everybody's trapped in their shadowy houses. I'm going to add a little... Sorry, I don't mean to.
They're out here with us.
I'm going to add a little warmth to these trees. Yeah, you're out here with us. We're sharing it. We're sharing it. Isn't that pretty? A little contrast in the colors, playing up the orange and the blues, the purples and the oranges in the greens here. And for artists, that these complementary colors, the opposite colors on the wheel of the color wheel, are fun. This is a fun time. Now I can add little orange in this tree here, especially on the shadow side, because it's a darker warm color, and that's going to help separate this tree out. So I'm going to add some to the trunk. I'm going to use the opposite of the blues in the background to bring this tree forward. The oranges are opposite of blue. And just a little bit, with crayons we can have fun with stippling. Stippling is just dots, right? Dots of color. There was an artist in France, Seurat, who used dots to paint entire paintings. I would find that frustrating, but there it is. It's still fun. Okay, and then I can bring some oranges to the water too. So reflections of these, and the reflections will go downwards, reflecting the cattails in the water here. But just to pick up some of the reds in the cattails, I'm going to flush these whites, because they're too bright, with the orange, just to get that sense of the cattails peeking up I'm aiming for whites. I'm trying to fill in the whites when I'm adding this orange. Too much white between the colors makes it pale and not. I like a lot of color.
Me too.
I like color. All right. Okay, so here we go. That's a little bit too much. I'm going to try to be a little more judicious over here. Leave some whites so that's bright. It's okay to make mistakes. I can always do another one. All right, so now add some of these oranges down in the grasses nearby, and you'll start to see that really coming forward as I do that. So the suggestion of grasses is just the suggestion of little vertical dashes, and these dashes, people will read that as, okay, there's some plants there, there's some grasses especially. Okay. Alright, so what have I got here? I need yellow in my tree. I'm gonna go with a nice lemon yellow. I can see the yellow up on the left side, sorry, and more blue and darker colors on the right side of that tree. So here we go. There's light falling on the left side of the tree, and I'm aiming for the whites. Anybody who's ever taken a class from me has heard that 1,000 times. Alright, aiming for the whites. And if you hit the color of the sky behind there, it's going to be more muddy or more green. So it doesn't help to separate. So really try to keep in your area here where you've left some whites. And just by hitting those whites, that yellow is really going to sing. And then you can have some yellows on this side as well. And even some yellows on the trunk. But that's going to make it a little less readable. Alright, so my tree is getting a little bit mixed up with my foreground, so I'm going to try to separate it out with using shadows. I'm going to move this just a tad, Anne-Marie.
Okay.
Okay, so I can see it. Now I can see it there. Move that over. Alright, so I want to see the shape of the shadow. And the shadow that's falling on the little slope behind the cattails is helping to differentiate the tree and also adding a very pretty element. It's a little bit horizontal here behind the cattails, suggesting that ridge, but it's bringing that tree out, separating it from the cattails. And I'm just going to do it on both sides a bit, get rid of those whites. Okay, but it becomes more of a shape, a purple shape. I can add some green to it as well, layering it over. This is a bit dark, but that's quite a blue-green shadow. Something like that. See how they blend, that purple and green? I don't know if you can pick that up on the camera, but it becomes a very pretty combination of purple and green. And you can add blues to that. But now you're starting to see the fun part of the drawing. Before it was a little messy, a little too light, a little too even across the thing, but now things are starting to separate. Okay? Bring some dark greens into the foliage here. I'm aiming for the whites. Oh, I said that before. That way I don't mess up my color that I've already laid down, and I'm just adding. And that way the light comes through the color that I'm laying down as well. It reflects off the white back through the color, the pigment. Surah, pointillism. That's a little bit too much, but it's fun. You got a little orange, you got a little yellow, you got a little green, da 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 da. It's a dance of color. All right, now I want to try to enhance my background hills again. I don't see the definition in the hills yet, so I'm looking at that. I'm thinking, how am I gonna make that fall back yet add those warmer colors? And you just have to be judicious. All right, so I'm gonna try, I want to try this green again, but it just looks too green already. I want to add some of this orange brown, this ochre color, and then we'll see how it goes. I'll probably have to then overlay some green on top of that, but I'm going to aim for the whites. Try to get rid of these whites. They really make it hard to read the drawing when you have bright white. White is the brightest thing in the drawing, so to have bright whites all over the drawing, it's very confusing. It takes away from the depth. So I'll keep hopping on that, cover up those whites.
And Bina is wondering if the video will be available to watch again. Yes, so the whole thing is being recorded right now and will go on our Facebook, and then I'll also be uploading it to our YouTube channel, so you can watch it in 2 places.
Alright, so I'm adding some of this ochre, a little too much, but like I said, I can always then layer over it. And it's allowing me to separate. I won't mess up the blues over here with too much, but I do want to cover up those whites. I'm going to spend the rest of this painting covering up whites. Alright, here we go, in between. This color is different enough from the tree that it doesn't blend in with the tree as much. And by smudging it over the rest of the colors back there, it's picking up some of the blue as well. It helps keep it separate from the tree. Whites, 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 no whites. Alright, now I'm going to bring it in over here as well. So now hopefully by doing that you can see the hills better. Did that work?
Mm-hmm.
It's separate. The hills are now separate from the trees, separate from this tree. I do want a little more brown in that mid-ground tree. And I'm looking at it and it's it is green. Well, I'm going to add some green first, but more of a sage green. I don't know if you can see this. It's sort of a blue-green, but it's got a bit of brown in it. Aiming for the whites. I've got to get those whites out of there. They're really confusing the perspective. So this is a brownish green, and you can see as I lay it down, hopefully those whites are going to go away, and this shape of these trees is going to become more defined. No whites. Oh, here's a blackbird coming in here with its red epaulets. Beautiful. So earlier on, before you guys came, just Anna Marie and I, we had a great egret fly off right here, and one of those red-winged blackbirds or another blackbird attacked it. It was
I had never seen that, but Edward tells me they're pretty aggressive, territorial little guys.
Yeah, that little blackbird looked like he wanted to land on the back of that egret. Okay, so there, I can see those trees now separating out very nicely. Add a little bit of green to those purple shadows. Ooh, that's coming along. Alright, I'm going to just, at the base of the mountain here, add some of the same green that I used in this mid-ground to some of these. That's an oak tree, by the way. You can't tell yet. But maybe if I add a little outline and a little shadow with this green, and another oak tree over here, say, outline it, shadow it, and I'll bring some purple shadows to those as well. Purple is still, or maybe a dark blue, but I want to define those trees now. They're starting to become more of an amorphous blue shape, so just outlining them with especially heavy line on the right side. If you look at those trees in the distance there, I don't know if you can see them well, but the right side is in shadow, and the shadow is cast down the hill on the right side of the tree. And that's what I'm drawing now, those shadow shapes. Okay? So what for me that means is, I'm going to grab a little purple. That means that this is a tree here. This side of the tree has a nice thick shadow of purple. Okay? And underneath the tree, there's a shadow of purple. And falling down the hill below it, onto the right there, is a shadow of purple. That's going to define the tree. It's going to help outline the tree. A slightly lighter, thinner line stippled on the right will sort of help finish it with just a little bit of speckling that shows that there are windows into the shadows inside the tree. Okay? And that's a tree. Okay, so on this tree here, shadow on the right of this tree, shadow on the right of this tree, shadow on the right of this tree, drop the shadow down the hill, down the hill, down the hill. And I'm starting to create trees. Okay, that purple shadow is going to help to define the hill slopes as well. Down the valley, down the right side, pick up some trees there, shadow side, very light on the ridge top, don't want to have too much dark in the back. But this is my shadow on the hills, aiming for those whites. And I'll just put some stipples there. Yep, shadow, that's a little bit too much there. Okay, and down here I'm just going to differentiate the horizon line a little better with some purple shadow. Okay, and now pop those shadows on that foreground tree, raise the arms high, shadows on the right of that tree, just trying to differentiate it a little more. So is that showing up all right?
Yes.
Okay, darkening some of the shadows here by going for the whites. Punch that shadow. Bang, bang, bang. Starting to sing a little bit. Alright, I want to bring some more greens back into the foreground. So this is too flat. So how do I make this into a plane that's coming towards me? Well, what I do and what artists do is, like what I did with the sky, you make it darker on one side and lighter, or blend colors. A blend. A blend will suggest that there's a difference of it's not just a single surface, it's a surface coming towards you or going away from you. Typically with distance you want to say, okay, I'll make it a little blue in the background, and I'm going to add a little blue back there. That do it?
Oh, yeah.
It's no longer just a flat surface. So a lot of beginner artists don't really utilize this technique enough. Just vary the color. If you have a big field of color like the side of a building, vary the color. Add some pink, add some blue to one side, blend it across. And that will make it prettier and give it more depth and interest. Okay, same here. So now I have the foreground. It's a little too flat. It's getting some detail, but what do I do to make it come forward? You see that?
Oh yeah.
That's wicked red. Now that's a bit much. That's a bit much, but yeah, that's the sort of thing I want to do. Looking like a rainbow now.
Mm-hmm.
Spectrum. Okay, so I can add a little bit of, and I'm going for the whites, red dashing as if it will shadows in between the grass. Some of these grasses do have some flowers. No, not the grasses, but some of the plants in here have flowers right now. And also the soil is red, so this red actually mimics what I'm seeing. There's a purple flower out here, hawksbill, stalksbill. Anyway, so again, it mimics that concept that I was trying to get across to you, that the spectrum creates depth. Okay? It's a little exaggerated, but it's fun.
Shows up though.
It shows up, but good. So I'm going to add some red into the tree too.
And Sammy is wondering if the changing sunlight affects your decisions.
Of course. Well, that's one of the challenges of being outdoors, isn't it? It's always changing. So either you're very good at photographing what you saw when you got there and you loved it, or you're just trying to keep up and painting the last thing you saw. That can be a problem, and it can create problems, or it can be a benefit. But I have my camera with me all the time, and I have my phone. And I wanted to show you something. So you see all this color that I use, and you think, okay, well that's a bit much, that's unrealistic. But it makes it more interesting. And as I said, what's here, it doesn't matter tomorrow for us, really. It's a drawing that has to live on its own, like a painting that has to live on its own. So make it interesting. If you don't like color that much, you can tone it down, but principles still apply. Just use less red or more subtle coloring.
And Elaine's wondering if you could either get closer to the mic or just hold it for now, if it's easy.
Thanks.
Working in nature.
It's easy. Is that good? All right. So Elaine paints with me, and so does Marilyn, so we're friends. Been friends for a while. I have an app, and Elaine's heard me say this before. I have an app, and it's called Mobile Monet, as in Monet the artist, and I took a photograph, and it converted my photograph. I don't know if you can see that.
Kind of. There's a reflection, but
okay.
See it a little bit. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so it converted my photograph to a drawing, and then it also then converts it to a painting, and I'll show you. I just say fill that canvas, and
hope you guys can get the general idea. You're getting my reflection in there.
Okay, well,
I think you can see the general
all right,
idea.
so what I'm going to show you now is there are a bunch of different options, but the option I tend to use most is called the Victorian Filter, and that will convert it into a painting. I'll see if I can get it to, yeah, there we go.
There we go. Yes.
Can you see the colors? So that's a photograph, and the Mobile Monet app converts it automatically into a painting. Can you see that? You'll see the reddish coloring in the foreground and the bluish coloring in the background. I didn't make it up. That spectral effect is there. Okay?
Okay.
Do you have a key filler lock?
Yes.
We got to keep that because these cows will push that open.
Okay.
And we'll have them out on Santa.
Oh, okay. That's my bad.
It's got to be locked.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay. Hello.
Okay, so that's
All right.
Mobile Monet.
And we're about at the hour.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. I will let you take over.
Oh, great. Okay.
So I can get
This is awesome, though. Just pin it back. And I'll do another zoom in right after I do my little talk so we can compare the painting, the beautiful pastel painting, with the landscape here. But thank you for joining us again today. A couple people asked, so we will have this whole thing recorded and be on the Facebook page afterwards, but we'll also put it on our YouTube. And we do have a link for our YouTube in the comments, but we'll post it again and make sure that's really clear for everyone. Thanks for joining us again today. We're actually going to be right here next week again with Edward, and I think we're doing wildlife sketching next week. Animals, yes. And birds was a couple weeks ago, but we'll be doing more mammals next week, so I'm really looking forward to that. And just wanted to remind you, thank you so much for coming to our virtual events, but also remember you can go outside. We really encourage everyone to go outside too. Take a walk in your neighborhood, enjoy nature close to home. There's so much you can find just in your backyard if you have one, or around your block. And so we'll keep posting different inspiration and ideas for staying connected to nature, even if you don't want to drive out to a preserve or somewhere where there might be more people. So thank you again for tuning in. And if you want to see more of our events, you can always go to our Facebook page or our website at openspaceauthority.org. And we'll see you next time. And thank you again, Edward. So I'll just zoom in again for everyone to see. Here it is. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.